I don't know if I've seen anyone who wouldn't say whether they're a top, bottom, or switch, because there's like very little stigma, no stigma in like a lot of the progressive spaces that I've been on.
So that's the interesting thing though. The overall like broad umbrella of people in society do still carry these stigmas. So if we're gonna say like, oh, well, in these progressive spaces, nobody like has a problem saying if they're a bottom or top or whatever, that might be true, but that's not the arena that we're engaging in right now. We're engaging in the more normie arena, where the conception is if you're a man and you're a bottom, you're less of a man, you are submitting yourself to another man, and that's like the idea. And there is a negative stigma attached to that. That's not even just for men who are bottoms. There's a lot of exceptionally negative stuff when it comes to women as well. So I didn't know that any of this happened, but apparently Ethan Klein of the H3H3 podcast, he was canceled recently because of so-called homophobic remarks or something like that. I don't actually know too much. However, I was watching a certain bearded gentleman last night, whom we will get to later, go over the whole thing. And I thought that from what I was hearing, I could provide an additional perspective and also an educational one. And I hope I'm able to do that. So here we have the apparent inciting incident where a caller calls in to the H3 TV podcast and talks about some stuff. Gay shit, I think. For some context, like as the title suggests, like apparently James Charles got like adult diapers in his search history or his purchase history on Amazon or whatever. So like people were speculating and pontificating about all that, but we'll get into that, I think. I've got a timestamp to, I think, a decent spot. So let's go, I suppose. What else is there to do?
Having to discuss such a topic. I mean, you know, it's okay. I mean, you're not... It's okay. I just wanted to get involved because, like, I know there's a lot of times it comes up where you bring in, where you often bring up people that you feel inclined. I know often you feel inclined to describe someone where you think they might be a bottom, and I think that that's often a misconception that like bottoms may be passive or the.
Well, I just mean that he likes
partner.
I just mean that he likes to take it up the butt.
Correct. But how can you know that about someone?
Well, that was just a theory about because he wears diapers. It's just a theory.
Oh, so we've just jumped into this. I provided a little bit of the context, and I think they go on to elucidate. But let's continue because I think we've got something here.
I'm moving on from James Charles. I'm sorry. I don't care about James Charles that much. Well, like, he should be in jail. I mean, beyond that one, yeah. What do I care about James Charles?
Okay, so
I'm talking about sometimes, like, I think I don't keep a running tally. I love you. I'm not keeping track of everything you do wrong. I'm not Keemstar. I don't have a document on my desk.
Appreciate that.
But like there have been times. I think one that comes to mind was maybe Jordan Peterson that you described as probably being someone that would be a bottom. That's
absolutely true, by the way. I'm sorry, and a subby bottom at that. But let's continue.
One I can think of off the top of my head, but like I've heard you at times maybe say like, oh, this is someone that might be a bottom, and I think that sometimes like that's not oftentimes like a misconception. Like I think if you met like I'm gay, let's just throw that out there.
No way.
And I mean I'm married, and I think like if you met me and my husband, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell which is which, and that's something that like you can't always tell, and it's. Like, you might always think at the bottom.
So, I know what the caller is getting at, but as we can see, I don't know that the caller is getting to the point in the way that would be helpful for Ethan and others to understand the point they're trying to get at. So the reason why I more or less understand, even the first time I heard this, what he was trying to get at is because I'm in that realm, okay? I'm in the realm of the queer community. I'm also in the realm of being a feminine person. And there's a lot of stuff that I'll go into as the segment progresses. But like, in terms of like the rhetoric being used here, I don't know if this is the correct context to bring up a broader conversation on tops, bottoms, whatever else, but just really quickly, for anybody who does not know what the hell is going on or what we're talking about, the caller is talking about bottoms and the way that Ethan Klein has referred to other people as bottom. And you might be asking yourself, well, what in Sam Hell, what in tarnation is a goddamn bottom? And the easy answer to that is it's a reference to people when they're having sex, usually men, but, you know, not essentially for men, but it's often the case that this is between one man and another man, where a bottom is the person being penetrated in sex, and the top is the one doing the penetrating. So either through their penis or a toy, a dildo of some kind, whatever else, if they're doing the penetrating, they are the top. Those are the two things. Top, put the penis in, bottom, receive the penis, okay? Now, most people will immediately think, well, oh, okay, if somebody is being penetrated, if they are the bottom, well, that person must be submissive because they're submitting to the person that's penetrating them. It's not actually true. You might be shocked to hear this, but dominant bottoms exist. But also submissive bottoms. So here's the interesting thing. Then you get power dynamics. You get power roles where you have submissive and dominant. So submissive people take the, as the name suggests, the submissive role in the power dynamic in the engagement here. Well, they're usually are going to be submitting to the will in a variety of different ways. Some people are super submissive. Some people just have like minor elements of it. It's a spectrum, as all things are. The reason why top gets conflated with dominant and bottom gets conflated with submissive is simply because that seems to be, in general, usually how things shake out in most engagements. If you're bottoming, there's a high probability that you're also going to be more submissive. If you're topping, there's a higher probability that you're going to be more dominant, but that's not always the case. So there are things called power bottoms. These are dominant bottoms. These are people that are still getting penetrated, but they lead the entire engagement. And then there's also what are usually referred to as service tops or submissive tops, which will be the ones doing the penetrating. However, they're going to take a back seat and they're going to submit to the will of the bottom. It's a very, you know, complex thing with a variety of different spectrums and whatever else, but this is kind of what we're getting at in this call. This is what the caller is trying to talk about, specifically in this case in regards to how Ethan Klein uses the term bottom and whatever else. And there is a lot of truth and worthwhile stuff to talk about when it comes to all this, and I was interested to do so.
Power bottom is a good example of moving up top, but like you can't
power
always tell
bomb.
like, who's the top, who's the
So
bottom.
do you find it
It's not
offensive
something
if I say, by being like, oh, he's probably a bottom? Is that the problem? To make
absolutely,
it's offensive.
because it is, because
So I wouldn't say that it is offensive every time, but it can certainly be offensive given the context. So if you're calling somebody a bottom disparagingly, what does that mean? Well, it means like, oh, you're a bottom, and most people think that bottoms are always submissive, so you're going to submit yourself, usually to another man. It's kind of like a way to demasculate. Emasculate? What word is this? Define... Emasculate. It's sort of a way to emasculate usually a man when it comes to that. Like that's what you're doing to Jordan B. Peterson. When you're saying, oh, Jordan B. Peterson, this guy that's like pretends to be like this masculine force, this guy's probably a bottom, meaning that he's not the masculine guy he pretends to be. He is not, and I'm emasculating him by calling him a bottom. And the reason why that works as an insult is because the common understanding of what a bottom is somebody who submits to the will of the top, which is not always the case. The whole thing, like the emasculation, has ties to homophobia. It has ties to even misogyny, funnily enough. Because women are almost always assumed to be bottoms, that also then extends to men who are bottoming as well, even if they're not the submissive partner there. They will usually be emasculated, like I said, and be considered more like woman-like. And it's very weird. So like, there's ties to it there too. But I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's just continue with this before I explain literally everything and repeat myself again.
The gay men already, you have to deal with certain assumptions about femininity and masculinity. I'm sure you understand that. I'm not going to throw out the whole.
I mean, it is
term.
funny
You're an
though.
ally.
I don't know. I think the problem is that the term power bottom is very funny to me. And sometimes
it's hilarious.
And sometimes, you know,
well, that's just simply because sex is funny. Like it's sex, haha, funny, pee, vagine, butt. Like it's very funny. Like we get this.
These
poop,
alpha
fart,
men
etc.
give power bottom vibes.
They could be,
but it's not a bad thing, right? It's not a bad thing. That's the problem. I think maybe the joke is the dichotomy of like their persona of ultra masculinity, but then like the joke being that they're a power bottom. But
yeah,
okay,
like that. So like I say, literally, I understand the reasoning for that, and that can be funny in specific context. So like when it comes to somebody like Ben Shapiro, who like props himself up as this like masculine guy and this like arbiter of what is and isn't masculine, especially when he talks about leftists and left-leaning people and how they're very feminine or whatever, the idea that, oh, well, this guy's probably a bottom, Ben Shapiro, it's an effort to emasculate him. And the funny thing is because of, like Ethan says, the dichotomy. Like I understand this and it can be funny, but Matt, I believe is the name of the caller, is not really talking about that. He's trying to have a broader conversation that's kind of intra-queer community stuff, which I think is the problem. Like, a lot of this is inside baseball, and trying to have this conversation with these people, like, you're putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. You're kind of like, you're jumping to advanced calculus and like string theory with a person who probably needs like algebra 1 level understanding of these things first before they can start moving on to the more advanced stuff. So I think that's where the disconnect comes in here.
To your point,
I didn't find anything wrong.
I see your point.
As a good counterexample, like I didn't find anything wrong with your and Brittany's usage when you guys were kind of throwing those things around. Like when you and Brittany were talking about it the other day, I didn't find anything wrong with anything you said that day. I thought that everything there was okay.
Matt, I will be more conscious of my use of power bottom.
I think the ascription of like throwing out that someone is just a bottom, like because it just ascribing certain roles to people. That's all I'm asking for is just be a little more conscious of it. I know you don't mean any harm. You never mean any harm.
And I also agree with that. I don't think Ethan meant any harm by it. I think any perceived missteps or problematic things from Ethan here could majority be attributed to ignorance. Like he's not in that realm. He's heard these terms because he has friends in the broader queer community, but he's not all the way in there. You know what I mean? Like he just doesn't know. He's learning as he goes. I don't think he's like malicious. I don't think he's homophobic, and I don't think any cancellation that he got was really warranted. There are some things that will come up in this conversation that were bad, and he has apologized for. We'll look at his apologies after this, but overall, I don't think he was doing it to be an asshole.
I'm harmless.
Yeah, you know your humor gets away from you.
Let me ask you this, Matt. So would you consider yourself a top or a bottom, or you don't do that, the labels?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew you were going to go there. And I mean this with all peace and love and with respect, Ethan. It's none of your business.
Oh, sure.
True. Very true. So this is the first thing that is kind of weird and not good for Ethan to do. I understand why he would be asking, but it is an invasive question. Like, this is essentially asking, like, okay, so when you have sex, you know, are you the one getting the penis in you, or are you the one putting the penis? And that's just, like the caller says, it's none of your business. Like, what do you care? Obviously, he's trying to ask the question to provide additional context and, like, inform his ideas about why this person is asking these questions. And it is, like, a question that is fine to ask given proper context. I think it was a little bit not good here, but it makes sense because if that person is a bottom, then obviously their life and the things that they've experienced with the fact that they are a bottom is going to inform what they're trying to talk about here, which is like the problematic aspects of how people perceive gay men. Like, Matt here is not doing like a cancellation. He's not like, oh my God, Ethan, you're the worst person in the world. You should be tried at The Hague. You should be tarred and feathered in the public square. That's not what he's saying. He's trying to educate. He's trying to provide an additional perspective that he thinks is missing in this conversation. But anyway.
I mean, that's a totally valid response. You don't have to answer the question.
Because from there.
But you have a preference one way or the other?
So then this is the major part that's not good. So like I say, I know why Ethan asked the question, and the fact that he asked the question, you can have your qualms about that, but like there is a reason why he was asking it. He's not asking it out of the blue. He's trying to provide additional context to the conversation they're having. Now, the fact that the caller said, well, it's none of your business, if Ethan left it there, then you're good. You're fine. Like, okay, I overstepped a boundary. My apologies. And, you know, you've decided not to divulge that information, so now we're going to move past that. It is what it is. Like, there's a reason why he asked the question, and then a boundary was put up, and then you were fine. Like, if you stop it there, you're good. The problem is that he continues to push. That's where the negative part of this comes in. And he has apologized for this, like we'll see later, but I just want to give you the context.
Yeah, but that's another dangerous assumption too. Because a lot of gay men don't have a preference.
Can I guess?
So that's another dangerous stereotype. What's that?
Oh yeah, and to say that a lot of people don't have a preference, I guess I didn't say before when I was describing like what a top-bottom dom sub is. There are people who are versatile and switches. Now these words mean different things depending on who you ask, but to be a switch in terms of the position you take, top or bottom, means that you can do either or. Sometimes people will only bottom or top for specific people. So like for instance, maybe somebody is attracted to feminine people and they will only bottom for very feminine people. They will not bottom for a masculine person or something like that. You know what what I mean? There are like situational things, and it's very contextual, and it's a large spectrum, and people are complicated, blah, 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 blah. And then to be verse, I think usually involves the power dynamic of sub or bottom, where it's essentially the same thing about the position, but for the power dynamic, the power role you take if you're submissive or dominant. Now, switch and verse can like be for either one, but essentially it means that there's a spectrum.
Can I guess what is your preference?
All right, and this is completely out of pocket. Like, you shouldn't be saying this. Like, he very clearly said it was none of your business. Like,
you can.
Will you tell me if it's right, if I guess right?
No.
Well, but either way, you would...
How about this? How about this? How about this one? You do a good job. You try to learn from this and do better. And then in 5-6 months, when you've shown some growth, then I'll tell you.
Okay.
Matt.
Seems fair.
Matt.
So now I have to pose a question to you, because this will be important later. Do you people watching think that this caller is a top or a bottom? Honest question. Now, it is invasive, and I don't think it's a good question to ask, also, excuse me, but... like, do you think they're a top or a bottom? There's probably an answer in your head. And the answer to that is probably, yeah, they're a bottom. And why do you think that? Even without the context of this conversation, why do you think that? Literally just hearing them talk, why do you think they're a bottom? The reason is because of their voice. Because they seem to have a more feminine voice, and because to be a bottom is seen as the feminine thing to do. Like I said before, like almost every woman is seen to be a bottom. Because of the feminine aspects of the person, people will immediately think bottom. You might be thinking, well, I didn't think that. Well, for one, congratulations, you're very woke. But I think most people would think that this person's a bottom. And the reason why I know a thing or two about this is because I present myself very femininely. However, for my entire life, I have been a top. So let's do this, okay? Let's have a little bit of fun. A quick thought experiment, okay? If you're looking at me and you see these pictures, you're gonna have an assumption about me. Most people, I'm pretty sure, would see me and think I'm a bottom. And most people would see me and think I'm submissive. That seems to be the case, and that's my experience. I get a lot of inappropriate comments and DMs from a variety of people, usually tops, usually men, about, like, you know, describing scenarios and all this kind of thing. And what is the reason for that? Well, it's because of the feminine way I present myself, at least in aesthetic. Now, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that I don't have the most feminine personality. I've got a pretty loud, rude, like abrasive personality, kind of tomboyish in that way. But if you look at just my aesthetics, you're immediately gonna think, oh, that person's a bottom, that person's submissive, but I'm not. Like, I dress the way that I dress primarily because I think I look best dressing very femininely. I enjoy seeing myself, and I have the most confidence in myself when I dress femininely. I like to do it because I think I look good. Now, obviously, I'm aware that there are people out there that will find me attractive because of the feminine presentation that I have, but that doesn't invite people to make these kinds of comments, make these kinds of advances, and be inappropriate in that way. But for some reason, people do. And the reason for that is quite simple, but it's not actually. It's the fetishization of femininity. I've talked about this before in the substitute teaching for this professor's femboy lesson. There'd be a link to that up there if you want to watch it. It's one of my more popular videos where I talk about the fetishization of femininity and the way that, of course, it affects women and always has, because women are the primary demographic to exhibit femininity and express themselves in that way. But now that men are more and more allowed to be feminine, which is a good thing, they're also going to be hit with the negative aspects of the fetishization of femininity as well, because anybody can be feminine. And that kind of experience that I've had informs a lot about what the caller is trying to get at. Like, I understand it very well, very intimately, because there are like a whole bunch of people coming at me all the time, expecting me to be submissive and expecting me to be a bottom. But if that's not who I am, which I'm not, then obviously I'm going to take that negatively. And even if I was, I'd probably still take it negatively because it's incredibly inappropriate if I don't know you.
Okay, you know what? I'm not going to get into it, Matt, but we all know which one you prefer.
Yeah, I think you probably do.
Yeah, and that's great. People that receive,
but as long as you understand where I'm coming from on this.
To be honest, I don't really. I'm trying, but I don't. I mean, I get it. Like,
he doesn't because he's not in the community. Like, I assume, a cishet man, and it's just not an experience he has. It's not like a bad thing, because I do think Ethan is a person who is willing to learn. Like I say, I just don't think this is the way that you would try to teach, because it's fairly, you know, intra-community stuff. He just doesn't understand it. Like, he's being truthful here.
I get the thing that, like, power bottom, it's this weird assumption to make, or to use it in a derogatory way, I get, because
What do you? Okay,
To be on the
what do you
bottom
think
is
a
to
power
give.
bottom
It's
is?
to give. You know, it's a gracious thing to give and to receive like that.
I think you're misunderstanding what a power bottom is. Like, because generally a bottom is like the receptive partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's someone who's just receptive.
Well, I mean, you could say that, oh, well, the bottom is giving their body to the other person, because that's, especially in a submissive context, if you're a bottom and you're submissive, you'll often be giving your body in, you know, whatever ways to the top and dominant person in the situation. So it's still giving in that way, but that's because literally everything in life is a give and take, and sex is not any different.
A power bottom. So generally, a bottom is kind of assumed to be the more passive partner. A power bottom is a bottom who is just the more active bottom.
Oh, okay, I see.
The dominant one. So
they'll
you're looking for the terms dominant and submissive here.
ride it. They can ride. A power bottom will ride it, where a regular bottom will just kind of lay there.
Generally, yeah. What did you think a power bottom was?
That's also still not the best way to describe that, I don't think, but that's not.
I thought it was just someone that liked receiving rather than giving.
Yeah, no, that's
Well,
just a bottom.
No,
in
a
general.
bottom.
Okay, so
I mean,
a power. Okay, so the power.
So we're trying to describe to a bunch of straight men intra-community, you know, lingo and terminology.
Bottom is
This is
someone
where
who
we fall
rides
into problems.
enthusiastically.
And they're probably the more active one.
Dominant. Just use the word dominant and submissive, please, God, Jesus Christ.
Okay, so what's the problem? I misunderstood the label.
A bottom is obviously someone. If someone's taking a dick in their ass, they enjoy it.
Yeah, of course. But you could be. I guess you could be on some days a bottom and some days a power bottom, which is great. God bless them.
So now we're a
God bless
switch
you.
or reverse. Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, Matt. Well, keep it up, man. I'm sure you are having fantastic sex and everything's good.
We speak in two different dialects. Yeah, there's two different languages happening here, and there's just a disconnect there because they don't have the experience or the knowledge. I feel like using dominant would confuse him more. I don't know. Like I say, it's a difficult conversation to have, and I don't think this conversation is best to take place on the H3TV podcast. Like, I understand the aims of what Matt is trying to talk about. I just don't think that this is the forum for it. You know what I mean?
You don't need diapers or anything, right?
About anal leakage, the only thing I know about anal leakage, I have never heard of that in anyone.
Right.
I have never
True.
heard of that. I think that's more, I do think that
So
happens.
the reason why they say this is because of the James Charles diaper thing. Essentially, James Charles did like a stream or something, and he had his Amazon account up, and like the previously purchased shit and had adult diapers in it or whatever. For one, James, what the fuck are you doing in general? But also for this specific context, literally make a second account, like open Amazon and incognito. What the fuck? What are you doing? That is a massive breach of one, privacy, and two, potential sensitive information. Like, come on, what are you doing? For the second thing, this anal leakage thing is not a thing. This is like a homophobic talking point. Now, it's not always, you know, coming from people who are homophobic. Some people just don't know. But usually when it's weaponized against people, it's homophobic. I've had these kind of homophobic remarks sent to me as well. It's like, oh, good luck when you're 40, 50 or whatever, you're going to need diapers because they assume like I'm a fucking bottom or whatever. Wonder why they think that. But the thing is that from what I've heard and from my experience, the fact that you're having anal sex frequently can often make it harder to take a shit, essentially, to pass waste. And the reason for this is multifaceted. So for some education for you, and haha poop lol, very funny, I get it. The major part of being a bottom and being penetrated when it comes to anal is the muscles in and around the rectum. Essentially the whole butt and the muscle groups related to it. The contraction and release of those muscles are what make the feel-good sensation a lot of the time. In fact, if you're even straight and you have a penis and you've masturbated, you've done this, actually. You know how like when you're fucking wanging it and you feel like a contraction every now and again, and like the blood like rushes through and whatever else, you're contracting those muscles, your Kegels or whatever. And when you do a standard penile masturbation and you ejaculate that way, those muscles are contracting around the prostate, and that's one of the elements that causes you to, you know, finish. So if you think that, you know, stimulating the prostate is what makes a person gay, then I have news for you. You're all gay, and you probably are. All of you filthy, filthy straight men out there have stimulated your prostate, whether you know it or not. So, like, that's what people were theorizing. James Charles, he got adult diapers and blah, blah, blah. Funny, lol, poop, lol. But it's actually not true. So I figured I'd educate in that way. But anyway.
Like, I think it probably comes from other things that come with being older men.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, no disrespect at all.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Sure.
This is just purely in the pursuit of knowledge. Well, first I appreciate you saying like correcting the anal leakage thing, but like if you are a regular receiver of anal sex, and I'm not saying you are, I don't know. But if you were, does the poop pass like any differently from before? Is it all normal functions? Like I get
it can actually become harder. Like I've already explained that. But I mean, he's just got like a middle school sex ed ignorance here. This kind of question. Like this is the kind of question. Like I remember when I was in sex ed, when I was in middle school, one of the kids was like, okay, but like when the baby comes out, when they snip the umbilical cord, if they cut less of it off, does that make the penis bigger? Because they thought that, like in my middle school class when I was a kid, that student thought that the umbilical cord was the penis, and then when they cut it, it determines how long it is. Like that's the level of questioning I'm seeing here from Ethan.
It doesn't leak out, but I wonder if it just comes out a little different.
No, yes, no. I mean, I have, I'm more like, I mean, I think you and I have more similar stomachs, but yeah, no, it's, I mean, I think I'm more, I relate to you a lot. I'm in the bathroom a lot.
Anyway, getting enough fiber in your diet will do way more for your bowel movements if you're exceptionally curious. Good diet and a lot of fiber.
Yeah.
But no, it's regular. But
okay,
I'm
interesting.
My stomach's about as irritable as yours. But yeah, no, it's more normal.
Okay. Well, there you go. You see, that's good knowledge to have. So, all right,
yeah,
Matt.
I've never heard of anyone. I have never heard of anyone having like just a
that bad
leaking asshole.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well,
but I think it does happen to sometimes older gays.
That does narrow the
like
options.
So Matt keeps talking about how it happens with older gays, and that's actually true. But this happens to older people in general. Like it's incontinence, the inability to have like a regular bowel function, and you have difficulties. And like this is why adult diapers are a thing. It's just because when you get older, your muscles get weaker, and it becomes harder for your bowels to contain it all, and you have difficulty holding it, and yada yada yada. This happens to literally all old people, regardless of if they put things in their butt or not. Just by the way.
It does narrow the options, doesn't it? On the James Charles diaper thing.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, you take care.
And
you enjoy.
I am BTS Army. I appreciate
BTS forever.
I appreciate
BTS.
I think that I do think you have a favorite one though. If I remember correctly, I think Jimin was the one that you wanted to fuck.
I mean, everybody's Jimin.
So I think yeah, so I think
all right, I don't care. All right, so Ethan did, after this, he got a bunch of people, you know, talking about him, how, oh, this was problematic, that was bad, we're canceling you, Ethan is over party, Ethan is essentially the incarnation of Satan, and yada, yada, yada. So he says, to my LGBTQ plus fans, I am sorry for comments on today's show. The sexualization of gay men and the grouping of tops and bottoms is a stereotype that I'll be trying to unlearn. Apologies to the caller, too, who I shouldn't have pressed inappropriately. Hope you guys know I always mean well. And he goes on in this, which I'm not going to watch, but if you want to watch it, we'll have a link to it in the description, to apologize on camera and kind of elucidate it and go a little bit more in depth with it. I think his apology was fine. I still don't think that it was cancel worthy or whatever. It was literally just a product of ignorance, not malice. And the fact that in this video, he talks about how, oh, I had people that I trust that are in the LGBTQI plus community talk to me about how such and such a thing was a problem and explain things to me, and that's good. And that's what prompted him to do the apology to begin with. That's all fine and good. But I think people were overreacting a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to continue to talk about this in another way. So a certain bearded gentleman that I talked about earlier also talked about this, and the things that he said, I saw them as opportunities to continue to address this thing that I've been talking about this whole time and all this kind of thing. Vaush was going over the drama as well, and I thought some of the things were interesting, and we could probably have a discussion about it.
Like throwing out that someone is just a bottom, like, because it
so we already heard a lot of
it.
this.
It just ascribing certain roles to people. Yeah.
This person has to be a self-conscious bottom, right? I'm sorry, like that has to be the only explanation for the point that we find ourselves at right now, right?
So, by the way, he's been watching it for a while. That's not the first thing he had to say. And I'm not out here to cancel the man, okay? But I did want to elucidate on some of this stuff. So, like, if your immediate assumption is, oh, well, this person has to be a self-conscious bottom. For those of you who don't know, Vaush is a pansexual person. He has a broader knowledge when it comes to LGBTQIA plus issues. But as far as he's said on his public platform, is a dominant top, or at the very least, just like a standard top. And in that way, I think it kind of portrays some of his ignorance as well, even as somebody within the community. So we had Ethan, who is a straight man, and now we've got a pansexual gay man, Vaush, and even he is not really got a lot of the information here, so I figured it is up to me to talk about it. So if your immediate assumption is, oh, well, this is probably a self-conscious bottom, the reason why he keeps talking about this and why he brings the issue up, the caller, It's because he's insecure about the fact that he's a bottom or whatever. And the next question you got to ask yourself is, okay, so why is he self-conscious? What is there to be self-conscious about being a bottom? It's a good question to ask. And I think it's actually a very important one to ask too, because you're probably right. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like he's a little bit insecure about the fact that he, you know, is being perceived as a bottom. And the reason why is simply because bottoms in general are seen to be submissive, are seen to be less of a man. And the stigma there is really bad, in my opinion. So you have to ask yourself, why is this person insecure? You can't just simply leave it there, because what they're trying to explain by calling in here is a lot more broad than that, and actually a good conversation to have. But we'll continue.
So would you consider yourself a top or a bottom, or you don't do that, the labels?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew you were going to go there. And I mean this with all peace and love and with respect, Ethan. It's none of your business.
Oh,
True.
sure. I mean, you can...
Oh my god, there's such a self-conscious bottom. Holy shit. Jesus Christ. I get, okay, again, I mean, I'm speaking out of bias here, but like in my social circle, both in real life with my real life friends and online with all the people I follow on Twitter and all the conversations I have and all the discourse that I see, like, I don't know if I've seen anyone who wouldn't say whether they're a top, bottom, or switch, because there's like very little stigma, no stigma in like a lot of the progressive spaces that I've been on.
So that's the interesting thing though. Even then, the overall like broad umbrella of people in society do still carry these stigmas. So if we're gonna say like, oh, well, in these progressive spaces, nobody like has a problem saying if they're a bottom or top or whatever, that might be true, but that's not the arena that we're engaging in right now. We're engaging in the more normie arena, where the conception is if you're a man and you're a bottom, you're less of a man, you are submitting yourself to another man, and that's like the idea. And there is a negative stigma attached to that. That's not even just for men who are bottoms, but women as well. And there's a lot of exceptionally negative stuff when it comes to women as well. So to say that like doesn't really mean anything, because it's not what we're talking about. But we'll continue.
Have you been on left Twitter? It's all bottoms. They won't shut the fuck up. I wish there was more stigma against bottoms, but there isn't. There's not enough.
So this is obviously in part a joke, but also partially true. So like on left Twitter, there are a lot of bottoms. There are many of them, and they are very loud about it. Now, an element of this could be that, oh, well, in left Twitter, people are more accepting. So, you know, it's more okay to say that you're these things. But there's the additional element of it that bottoms being very loud about it is almost the same reason why gay people in general are really loud about it. So you'll often hear like, oh, well, these gay people, they're just making it their entire personality. Why do you have to make your sexuality your entire personality? Well, the reason why gay people will be very out, proud, and open about being gay is an effort of normalization. They want to make it clear to people that it's okay to be gay. It's a normal thing to do. The visibility allows people to understand that. The visibility allows people to be like, oh, well, I might be gay myself, and I didn't know that was okay. So now that I've thought about it a little bit more, maybe I am gay or whatever. It allows people some more introspection, and it's overall a good thing. That's a point of pride. You're supposed to be proud about it, open about it, loud about it, so that it gets normalized in society. I do think there is an element of that as well when there are a lot of bottoms now, because we've progressed in society where it's more okay to be gay. Now we're going to go on to the next layer of the onion for bottoms. There are a lot of bottoms out there where previously, and there still is a lot of this stigma about being a bottom, but now we're going to try to be open, proud, and loud about it as an effort to normalize the idea that it's okay to be a bottom, a dominant or submissive. And I think that that can be helpful. Now, I do think that a lot of people on Twitter and online in general don't really know when it's appropriate or not appropriate to be overtly sexual, and oftentimes it's incredibly inappropriate. So I do agree that there are people that are just talking about like these sexual acts and things way too openly. Like your public platform may not always be the best place for that kind of talk, but that's not to suggest that simply stating that you're gay is a problem. It's not. But anyway, I think that that is an element of it. I think it does act in that way. And in that way, destigmatizing the idea of being a bottom, I think is a good thing.
But you have a preference one way or the other?
Yeah, but that's another dangerous assumption too. Because
Can I
a
guess?
lot of gay men don't have a preference.
Can I guess?
So that's another dangerous stereotype. What's that?
Is that way? Just to be clear, is that a dangerous stereotype that a lot of people are either bottoms or tops? I don't think that's a dangerous stereotype. I think that this person might be projecting a lot of their, like,
I do think that there are ways that the stereotype could be dangerous. So like a big like misogynist way of thinking for a lot of men when it comes to women is that, oh, women are just sexual objects to be conquered, and the penetrative sex that they have is an element of that or whatever. And that is negative in the idea that like that's like the reason they're pursuing these women is to do that, to fulfill that power role, that power fantasy, whatever else. This can absolutely extend to gay men as well, and like especially very feminine men. And I also have experience with it. So as a person who presents very femininely, I'm always assumed to be a submissive bottom, and I get a massive amount of inappropriate comments directed my way to that effect. And it could be the case that I fall victim in person to somebody doing this and going too far with this assumption. Because like, I don't know, like men don't do this to masculine men, usually. I don't know, it ends up leading to a lot of negative consequences. The assumption that these people are submissive and bottoms, I feel like is a bit of a problem.
Homophobes don't care if you're a bottom or a top. This isn't ancient Rome, you know? They care if you're gay. Like, if you're a gay top, it's not like homophobes are going to be like, it's cool, whatever, you know? Like,
that's also not entirely true. So it is true that in general, people who are homophobic are not going to care what position you're taking. However, like a common thing that will happen is that, so let's say you have a friend, you're a man and you have a friend who's a man, okay? And you're talking to that man, and you're like, oh, I'm gay. But no, it's okay. I'm the one who does the fucking. I don't get fucked. And like the other man is like, whew, and they breathe like a sigh of relief. Like, okay, this person is the one doing the fucking. Therefore, they assume they're doing the dominant power role there, and they're more manly as a result. So you don't have to feel as bad about it. There is certainly like a spectrum of homophobia when it comes to that. Because to be a bottom as a man is inherently, for some reason, to people in society, like less manly, less masculine. Because of this, there have been times when people will say these kinds of things. Oh, it's absolutely misogynistic. There is absolutely a lot of misogyny that informs the idea that to be a bottom means you're submissive, means you're less of a man as a man. And it's because that's usually the assumed position for women. And that's definitely how this can inform the homophobia that people have.
Like, right now, I don't think the discourse is bottom shouldn't be an insult, though. First of all, yes, it should. Second of all, it's not serious. I don't think any real, like, bigotry is coming through towards like bottoms or tops. You know what I mean? You could argue that more bigotry is levied against feminine gay people. And that's true.
Yes.
But then if you were to assume that feminine gay people are more likely to be bottoms, you would be the one doing the assumption.
So this is true. So this is to do with the fetishization of femininity that I've been hinting on this entire time. This idea that if you're feminine, you're always submissive, you're always a bottom, you're always a sexual object to be conquered. But this is also the case for homophobes in general. All gay people are seen that way, even if they're super masculine. It just depends on like how homophobic the person is, I guess. But it is certainly true that there is more bigotry that feminine gay men will face because not only do they have to deal with the homophobia, they also have to deal with the fetishization of femininity. And that is just an additional thing that will inform a lot of their perspective about all this kind of thing. And I think this is the thing that the caller was trying to talk about, that because of this, like the inherent assumption that just because somebody is feminine means that, you know, now they're going to be subject to all kinds of fucking fetishization, sexualization, all these kinds of comments, even like in-person assault or unwanted advances and whatever else is not good. And I think that's part of what Matt was trying to hint at when he was calling in. But I just don't think, like I said, that the forum of the H3TV podcast is the place to do that.
I think it's okay to point out that being prejudiced against femininity within gay men is bigoted. But as for the top-bottom discourse, I just think it's funny. I don't know. I don't know if there's any real hate taking place there. There is some hate for, like, feminine guys, though. Have you ever seen on Grindr, there will be people who are like, no fatties, no femmes? I've seen that a lot. Maybe because there's, like, a ring to it. Because they basically just, they're like beefy twinks who want other beefy twinks. You know?
And the rest of this I don't care about because I'm not on Grindr because I don't hate myself. Somebody in the chat saying I'm a super mask bottom and I get shamed all the time. Bottom shaming is unfortunately very real within and outside the community. This is also true as well, which is really annoying. So like I've actually talked about this before. Let me see if I could find it. I've tweeted it out. Oh, there it is. This is from June 25th, 2020. Daily reminder that femme-top/doms exist, and it's toxic to assume otherwise or push submissive roles on them. So this happens a lot for all feminine people, especially if they go contrary to what the expectation is for feminine people, which is submission and being a bottom. And this can happen a lot, where there will be a person who's very feminine, and they are a top, and they are the dominant person. They don't want to bottom, they don't want to be submissive, and people will try to push those boundaries and force them to do those things. That's not good. That's toxic. That's bad, actually. And you shouldn't do that. And I have been subject to this a lot as well, not only in the untoward comments that I get, but just in general, whenever I say that I am a top, people are like, oh my God, you are? No way. It's really fucking annoying, and it's not good. And just one more thing that I wanted to talk about. So all the way back in chat, I was talking about how Vaush, like his queerness is checked a lot because he presents himself very masculinely. And somebody in chat said, isn't he seen as not queer because he's masculine? Not all masked people are tops. And that's also true. For one, that you shouldn't like check somebody's queerness or whatever. Like there's no way for them to validate it for you in a way that's appropriate, I guess. And for two, that's literally the reason, because he presents himself very masculinely, is very like loud, very abrasive, yada yada yada. He is seen as a top, and because of that, the position of top is seen to be less gay or whatever because of the power dynamic, because bottoms are seen as less masculine, less manly, and feminine people will often be attached to that because they're seen as more feminine. It's part of the reason why that happens for him, which is interesting. To summarize, essentially the take is this. I don't think what Ethan did was cancel-worthy. He apologized for pressuring the person inappropriately, which is good that he did apologize, and that was really bad. It seems like he genuinely just was ignorant of a lot of things and didn't know any better, and was trying to get a little bit more information. The broader problem seems to be the suggestion that, oh, if a person is a bottom, they're less manly, less masculine. Because of the fetishization of femininity, it causes a variety of negative consequences, not only outside of the queer community, but within it as well. I think Matt wanted to talk about that because it's a very important thing that I think to talk about, because if we could solve this issue within the community, we can certainly work to solve it outside of the community. And it doesn't just affect gay men, it affects, you know, all feminine people. So women as well, because women are often presenting themselves femininely. So it would be beneficial to all people that want to present themselves femininely, and even those who don't, but are perceived as feminine because of the negative stereotypes and the fetishization of it, to defetishize femininity. It's a very big problem that I've noticed, and it's something that I care about a fair amount. Yeah. This video's counter-called as Tanner B emoji. Thanks so much for being around. Hope you don't buzz off anytime soon. If you'd like to be the next Conure Call It, all you can do is fly on over to my Twitter at ConureCC, give it a follow, retweet my video links when they go live, an incredibly smooth process. Remember to leave a like if you like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell as well, appreciate that, all notifications on, you know the damn deal. Leave a comment down below in support of, I don't know, bottoms or something, because that's what this video's topic is about apparently, and have a fantastic rest of your time on this green earth, at least while it remains green. Save the bees, very important.